Hi friends, it's Lauren. Thanks for joining me back in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here for a Spellbinders video. I'm using some products that were gifted to me from Spellbinders from the Home for the Holidays collection. And I just wanted to share the items that I got. I have the Poinsettia Spray Etched Dies, the Christmas Greetings Etched Dies, and the Argyle Plaid 3D Embossing folder. I will bring in some other dies, cardstock, and gems throughout the video, but these are the dies from this new collection that was released this month, and I did lots of die cutting before I started filming again. Now I do get samples of these dies, and I am missing a die from the Poinsettia spray. I am missing the leaves that layer onto kind of the base piece, but I think it still looks really pretty at the end. It doesn't need them. But I just want to let you know there are leaf dies as well if you decide to purchase this etched die set. So to wrap up my die cutting, I grabbed in the Fluted Classics rectangles, and I used the largest die and the details on some fog cardstock, and that cuts an A2 base for my card. And then I used the smaller rectangle that would be kind of the inside of that cut to die cut some white cardstock, and I'm going to run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 through the Argyle Plaid 3D embossing folder. Now later on, I'm going to change my mind. I don't really like the white because everything I have is kind of off-white. There's no other white in this card besides this background. And when I start layering everything together, I don't really like it. So I will come back to that later. But let's get going on gluing all of these different die cut pieces together. So I'm going to start with my Merry Christmas from the Christmas Greetings Etched Dies. I die cut the words Merry and Christmas out of some Barely Peach cardstock, and then I die cut the shadow pieces out of Lunar gray cardstock. And I'm just using my glue with a fine point to add adhesive all along the back of my sentiment. I'm using some tweezers to hold it in place, and because I accidentally put far too much glue than I needed, I'm just tapping the back and kind of spreading it out and then wiping my hands on a towel that I keep nearby. These layer together so perfectly with the shadow, so I'm just making sure that it looks centered and straight on this shadow piece. And for the tittle of the eye, I'm just going to add glue to the shadow piece and use a pickup tool to add that tittle of the eye. And then I repeat that same process for the word Merry. So my sentiment is done. Let's move on to the fun part, which is assembling all of these beautiful flowers. I die cut the poinsettias from Poppy Field cardstock, and I did one large and two small ones, so I'm just layering these together. And then the insides are cut from Barely Peach cardstock. And again, just using liquid glue and my tool to help layer all of these together. So that's how I put together the large poinsettia, and here is the small one. Now you can definitely change up how you layer these together. Sometimes they look a little funky if they don't, go in a certain way, but I love the creative freedom when layering the different flowers together. It just allows you to have different looking flowers even though they're the same die set. For these smaller flowers, I die cut them out of some pink sand, and then the insides are a part of the same die as the poinsettia, so those are Barely Peach as well. I went for kind of a softer feel of traditional Christmas colors, so I have the green, I have the red, but then I'm bringing in like that peachy pink color and an off-white peachy color, so I just think they look really nice together. For these flowers, they cut 6 at a time, so I did the base out of the poppy field so they match the poinsettias. I'm doing the next layer out of Barely Peach, and this is going to be the inside, kind of what pops through the very top layer, so kind of the center of the flower, and then the top layer I did that pink sand color as well. So I'm using some repositionable tape to keep all my pieces in place while I layer them together, and then just, gently applying pressure to make sure they all stick together. And I'm going to leave them on this mint tape and set it aside so they finish drying, and I'll move on to making my little berry clusters. Now I did 4 of these. The die creates 2, so I ran it through 2 times, and I ran it through Poppy Field, so I'm just layering the 3 berries onto the backing piece, and they do overlap each other a bit, so just keep that in mind when you're gluing, that you will have a little bit of dimension on these little berries. So I started with just gluing one down on each of the little pieces, the backing pieces, and then I glued down the other 2. And just like my flowers, I'll go ahead and leave that on that repositionable mint tape aside while I start figuring out how I'm going to layer my little poinsettia cluster together, or spray, the name of the die. So like I said, the die set also includes leaves, so you could start with adding the leaves onto the spray piece, but I'm going to obviously skip that part and move into adding in the flowers. So I know that there's these 6 smaller little areas to add these smaller bud looking flowers. And then there's 6 larger circles that I'm going to use as a guide for layering on the poinsettias and the pink flowers. So I'm kind of figuring out the layout, and I decided that I kind of like the pink flowers more to the top and the poinsettias to the bottom. So I'm just going to swap those 2. And once I have those in place, I'll just pick them up and add adhesive to the green spray part, and then add in each of the flowers. That will take a little time, so I'm just going to fast forward here and add this last poinsettia. For the berry clusters, there really isn't a set place to put them, so I'm just going to add some glue where I see an opening, like right here in between these flowers. I felt like it could use a little berry cluster, so I'll go ahead and glue that one in place there. And I do them all around the card, and I add one here on the bottom as well. I am going to end up moving that one a little bit, but I'll talk about that when I get to that part in the video. So now I have all my layers ready to glue together. I know that I want my gray cardstock to be on the back, so I'll go ahead and grab some adhesive. I completely covered the back, and I'm adding it to my top folding A2 card base. I always start from the score line in case I need to trim off any excess from the card because I didn't get it cut just right. And I'm going to quickly just go over, I added some pink spritz. This was worn lipstick, I believe, to the white cardstock because I thought the pink would add to the flowers, and I hated it. It did not match. It was the wrong pink. The white, I just didn't like it. So I cut a piece of alabaster cardstock down to fit on the inside of that gray rectangle. I did not die cut it again because I already put my die set away, but I just trimmed it down, ran it through with my 3D Argyle Plaid embossing folder again, and this time I'm using weathered wood spritz to spray and also kind of splatter onto the background, and I liked this so much more. The gray just blends in. Well, it's a gray blue, but it just blends in really well with the 2 shades of gray cardstock on the card. And then the alabaster matches the peach vibe, the barely peach that I have on the card, just better than the white did. So using my super sturdy adhesive, I glued that down to the center of the card, and I'm going to do a mix of foam and liquid adhesive behind my poinsettia spray. So I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the backs of my flowers, just a couple of the smaller kind of buddy looking flowers, and then I added liquid adhesive behind all the leaves, parts of the stems, and some of the other kind of smaller flowers that I did not put foam adhesive on. And I'm going to just place that right onto my card base. I really liked it the first time I laid it down, so I just went ahead and pressed down to make sure it would really adhere to that 3D embossed piece of cardstock. Now I'm taking some thin foam. This is a 1mm foam. That's the same thickness that I use behind the flowers, and these are strips that I'm using to cover the back of my sentiments. I'm going to use my grid here to try and get my Christmas as centered as possible. And as I was about to adhere it down, I noticed that it covered that little berry burst right there, berry bundle. So I pried it off without ripping anything too badly, which I was really happy with. And I'm going to just move it over so it's not behind the tittle of the eye. It's more on the leaf, and that way you can still see it. So just adding a little bit of glue and putting it right back in there. And then I will add the Merry sentiment. Again, I have foam adhesive behind it. I'll go ahead and peel off all of the release paper and then get that added to fit above Christmas for my sentiment. I really liked it as is, but I love sparkle, so I'm bringing out some of my Color Essential gems, and I chose the peach blush, and I'm just going to add a few, mostly here in this upper right hand corner. I have put 2 and then a small one in the lower left hand corner just to kind of fill in that little empty spot in the top right corner. Here's a close-up look at my Home for the Holidays Merry Christmas Poinsettia spray card. I hope you had fun with me today seeing how you can layer these dies together and just some fun inspiration with a cool, or what I think is a cool, color combination for Christmas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!